Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Don from 1A Auto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And the next time you need a part for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to replace the lower front control arm on this 2003 Maxima. Pretty much the same for any, the procedure is the same for any Maxima around this year, as well as the Infiniti i30. A lot of times these control arms will actually rust out. 1A Auto, we sell a very nice replacement. We're going to do the left side. The right side is pretty much the same procedure. And you'll need a new control arm from 1AAuto.com. Jack and jack stands. In the video we do use a lift. It makes it a lot easier to video all the different angles, and it does make the job easier, but this is a job you can get done with jack and jack stands. You'll need 15, 21, 22, 27, and 32 millimeter sockets, ratchet and a breaker bar or a pipe for some extra leverage as some of the bolts are quite tight, pliers, a 14 millimeter wrench, a torque wrench, and you probably will need an impact wrench to get the center hub nut off. Start out by removing the front tire. If you don't have air impact tools, start with the tire on the ground, loosen the lug nuts, then raise and secure the vehicle with jack stands, remove the lug nuts the rest of the way, and remove the wheel and tire.
Taking the cotter pin out of this axle shaft.
Okay, it's basically just a procedure of straightening out the ends of the cotter pin and pulling it back through with a pair of pliers.
Right, my 32 millimeter socket, zap off the axle nut. Most likely you're going to need an impact gun for this.
Okay, so while Don's working on that, a little commentary here. We did try to get this nut off with a breaker bar and a piece of pipe. They are tightened to 217 foot-pounds, and this one did not come off using that method. Most likely you're going to have to use an impact wrench.
I'm making sure that the axle isn't seized inside the hub, so I just push it through. And it's pushing through no problem. If you find any resistance, you can screw your nut back on just a little bit and give it a couple whacks with the hammer, and that should loosen it up. I'm going to remove the lower stabilizer link nut, 15 millimeter, and counterhold the opposite side with a 14 millimeter wrench.
On this side, you put the wrench right in between the boot here and the control arm. Okay, so you can see Don's got that bolt loosened up, and just fast forward here as he removes it.
I got the nut off, and I'm just going to push the stabilizer rod out of the lower control arm.
27 millimeter nut on the front of the control arm. Spray that down with some penetrating oil.
I'm using a 27 millimeter socket to remove this front nut on the lower control arm, and I'm doing that because we're going to need to swap over the bracket to the new control arm once we get it out.
Okay, you saw Don loosen it up with the ratchet and pipe. He's just going to loosen up until he can twist it by hand, but he's going to leave the nut on there for now.
I'm removing the 4 front lower control arm bolts. They're 22 millimeters. And then I'll proceed to the back and remove these 2 22 millimeters. Using a breaker bar and a pipe for extra leverage.
As you can see, it takes quite a bit of leverage. You'll need your ratchet and a pipe, or your breaker bar and a pipe. If you have to use hand tools, you can see here we we just go just to make the video go a little quicker and make things go quicker. We just go over to the impact wrench and pull the rest of them out.
I got my control arm down, nut off, and I'm going to pull the joint, push it through. Out the front. I'm removing the cotter pin from the ball joint.
Okay, and I'll fast forward here. Really important that you get that cotter pin all the way out. Donnie uses pliers and then a hammer and drift pin and gets it out.
I'm using a 19mm socket and breaker bar to remove the nut.
Okay, and fast forward here through as Don removes that nut the rest of the way. As you can tell, it took quite a bit of force to get it off initially. The next step would to break the ball joint free from the steering knuckle, and we actually kind of missed getting the footage. Use a hammer, and in this picture you can see the dot. That is the steering knuckle. You want to contact the steering knuckle right there very hard with a hammer. After hitting it probably about 4 or 5 times, the ball joint should break free, and then you can pull the control arm right down. Okay, original control arm, transfer the alignment bracket to the new control arm from One Auto. As you can see, it's exactly the same. It's going to install the same and function the same. Okay, now speeding through these a little bit, put the ball joint up in place on the control arm, screw the nut on, then tighten it. You want to torque it to about 45 to 50 foot-pounds, and then turn it further to line up the castle nut with the hole in the ball joint, and then put your cotter pin through and bend the ends over. Make sure the ends don't contact the CV joint at all once it's all put together.
I'm putting the axle back in. I'm installing the bolts for the lower control arm.
And fast forward as put those in and then tighten them up preliminarily.
Lower control arm bolts that go to the chassis to 120 foot-pounds. For this nut here, before we tighten it up and torque it to 120 foot-pounds, we've put a jack underneath the control arm so that it gets it into the correct ride position, ride height.
And a little fast forward here as we put the stabilizer back in place. Just put it back into the control arm and use the 14mm wrench to hold the shaft as you tighten it up and get it nice and tight. Install the center hub nut and just kind of tighten it preliminarily.
I got Mike in the car holding the brake pedal down while we torque to 217 foot-pounds. Putting the cotter pin back in.
Okay, make sure you put your transmission fill plug back in, then you can put your wheel and tire back on, hand thread the lug nuts first, tighten them preliminarily, and then torque them to 100 foot-pounds. And then make sure you get your vehicle aligned. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.1aauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.